so excited today to have Liv Loo on the Arthritis Life podcast. Welcome.
Woo! Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this is so exciting because I feel like I said earlier, I feel like I know you already. And even though we've only interacted on social media asynchronously, so now we're synchronous. So woohoo. Yeah, could you just give a quick intro to start off? Where do you live and what is your relationship to arthritis?
Yes, so I live in San Francisco, California. So I've been here for about 14 years. And my relationship to rheumatoid arthritis is I've had RA since I was 4 years old and uveitis since I was 8. So I've been, a spoonie my whole life.
Wow. Yeah. I would love to hear how, when you were 4, what was the process like to get diagnosed? What were some of your first symptoms? And do you remember anything from that, or is it more your parents telling you?
Yeah, surprisingly I do. And surprisingly I don't. The biggest thing I remember is actually having tummy aches in the morning, especially before going to kindergarten. I love kindergarten, still do.
Kindergarten for life.
So I'd have massive stomach aches and I'd go on my mom's floor and I would just keel over in the fetal position and be like, Mommy, my stomach hurts so bad. And I don't remember my joints hurting, but I just remember being like, something is terribly wrong. And my mother, being the amazing advocate she was, did everything in her power to talk to doctors, not take no for an answer, go to specialist after specialist until somebody listened and took the time to do more tests and talk about more information. And she also read a number of medical encyclopedias. So her best friend, my auntie, was like, your mom could have been a doctor just because she read so much and was so educated and cared so much. So
wow. Now you don't have to say your exact age, but if you want to share your age range or what time period was this?
Yeah, no, I'm 32 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have no problem sharing my age either. I always
me neither.
Okay. Because I think the reason I asked that is that I think it's really hard for people who are younger to understand what it was like before the internet was so accessible and ubiquitous. And you literally had to go to the library to check out books about stuff. You couldn't just search on I don't know, because you're about 10 years younger than me. So maybe it was by then there was this kind of interesting period where it all changed. But yeah, that's, tummy aches are one of the most common manifestations in children of all sorts of conditions, right? So it could be anxiety, could be cancer, could be, juvenile arthritis. So it's amazing that she, kept on searching. Do you have any family history by any chance? I'm just curious if that, anyone else.
So my mom in particular had fibromyalgia. She definitely had some, I'm unsure if it was rheumatoid or osteoarthritis. And she also had a lot of mental health conditions going on for her from a lot of childhood trauma and such. And a lot of my aunts on my maternal side, they also had a lot of mental health conditions. I'm unsure about my paternal family, if they ever had any autoimmune conditions. But right now, in later adulthood, my brothers found out that they have gout. Gout comes up for them a few times, but nobody's had it like me or my mom. Nobody's shown up in the ways that my mom and I had.
Okay. Well, that's just, that's really a testament to her, that she listened to you and advocated for you. And I know the focus of this episode is going to be a couple other things, but I'm always curious to hear some of the highlights and lowlights of having juvenile, it was probably called juvenile rheumatoid arthritis at the time, or now called juvenile idiopathic arthritis. Were you ever isolated from peers, or do you ever have any teachers or people who didn't understand, or on the converse, any positives, you want to share? Highlights and lowlights.
Totally. I find, especially after being an advocate for people and hearing their experiences, I find myself so lucky, so fortunate. And also this is how it ought to be for everybody. So because it started when I was so young, I started kindergarten having a diagnosis, and I didn't go to preschool. So my mom immediately let the office know, let the teachers know. She was such a great advocate. And she was pushy too. I oftentimes was late to school, and the office, I would walk in and the office would recognize me and give me a late slip without question. So I didn't have to sit there. I didn't have to explain myself. I was just immediately excused, which on the contrary, like it was a little bit weird walking in late and having all the kids look at me and being like, why is it okay that she's late all the time? And so there was a little bit of issue there, but overall, I don't remember it bothering me too much. And then fast forward to high school, I actually I went on methotrexate in high school, and it actually was a godsend. I went into remission for a year, but then when I came out of that remission and like all the symptoms came back, had a lot of friends. I was friends with everyone. Like I was one of those people who kind of hopped around. I was like, hi, hi, hi. And I had a lot of friends on like the football and basketball team. And my friend Jason, and I even reached out to him like a year or two ago. And I was like, hey, I was talking about having RA in high school, and I'll never forget that you did this for me. But he would give me piggyback rides to class so that I made the bell. And he wouldn't even ask too. And it was one of those things where you never want to ask for help and you don't want to say yes to help. And I didn't have to do either. He was like, hey, where's your class? Cool, hop on. And because at the time I was on one crutch because my leg was so inflamed. And so I get chills right now because I'll never forget that. Like such kindness and understanding. So yeah, my like as far as like school went, such a great experience, really positive. I even actually got put in homeschool for a while, which I know has this like serious stigma, but it was from 5th and 6th grade. So I ended up being really shy going into 7th grade, which is kind of like, ugh. But it enabled me to really take my time, and it kind of taught me to like taper my energy throughout my day, which is a really cool experience. And none of my friends, like childhood friends growing up, they didn't ask questions. They were just very accepting and just kind of went with the flow. So
no, that's amazing. And I literally have had the same thing before about like, well, in my 20s, I was diagnosed at 20, but people are like, oh, were you like, peer pressure to like drink when you're on methotrexate, or do your friends like really, not understanding about it. And I was like, the only thing I ever felt peer pressure to do is just stay up late or like sacrifice sleep. And I think that was harder for them to understand, like that I really like sleep is a medical need, for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always feel like, except for some of the treatment by some of the medical professionals, I feel like for my family and friends, I just got like so lucky that like, everyone was so understanding. So it's great to hear someone else had the experience, because sometimes I'm like, am I the only one? But yeah. And I think that, that piggyback ride is such a great example of like inclusion, like true inclusion, right?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like done in a way that makes you feel like this is fun, and like everyone wants a piggyback ride, right?
Yeah. So like, why did she get it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. And I think I volunteered at the Arthritis Foundation, our local catfish camp for kids and families. I always say this wrong. Catfish family camp for kids with juvenile idiopathic arthritis, so the whole families can come. And it's so great that the siblings are there and they get to kind of meet other people and realize that their sibling is not the only one. But also, I was talking to one of the families about that whole idea of, people quote unquote using their disability as an excuse or like asking for special treatment. And I had this long conversation with two of the parents about that with their high schooler, and we just kind of talked about like, what do you really have to lose from believing the child, right? If your 13-year-old is saying that they are really, really tired in the morning, because I mean, if those listening, if you don't know too much about inflammatory or autoimmune arthritis, morning stiffness and difficulty getting started with your energy in the morning is like a hallmark, symptom.
So
and so I'm like, I think most people, this is just, maybe I'm like a Pollyanna, but like, I think most people over time, like, yeah, they might experiment a little bit with like, ooh, what can I get away with? Because that's part of being a teenager. But like at the end of the day, like they're gonna, I would imagine, I'd rather err on the side of believing that they're gonna self-monitor and be like, okay, like it's boring after a while to get away with like going in late to school every single day, maybe. And so I was like, why not just err on the side of believing the child? Like, I mean, but I don't know. I mean, again, I think I struggle, like, am I just being naive? But I'm like, so like,
No, and
I
it's
don't know.
true
What do you
because
think?
like, yeah, it's absolutely true because even if it's not, say, like arthritis or some like physical condition, it could be like they're having like a mental trip. Like, why do kids try to get away with stuff to begin with? It's likely because they need something, or it's
Yep.
all of it is some form of communication. So like leaning into that is, I agree with you. It can never be a bad thing. At the end of the day, you're going to learn something.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
you totally hit some synapse fire when you said that, because I used to work with, children with developmental differences and neurodiversity. And, that was a great book I read by Ross Green called No Bad Kids. And it's like all about how like all behavior is communication, and so that is the communication saying that I'm lonely. Is it that and that it's a form of, they're all a form of communication. So I just think, like at the end of the day, I don't want my own child to ever think that I've questioned their self-assessment of their pain, because no one can know someone else's pain, right? As much as we try.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
but on a totally different, on a little different note, but one of the things that I first noticed when, I guess I don't even remember the first time I saw one of your videos, but we've met, just like Allie, Another Day with RA, just met over social media. And you're known for, being such a great role model for, flare friendly fitness. Oh, I just made that alliteration. Or you probably already said it. Yeah, like flare friendly fitness. You're a friendly flare. Yeah. You're my friend who does flare friendly fitness fabulously.
Oh my God.
Fabulously. And
great.
and I also think that you seem to really embody like a self-acceptance vibe. And like, I think that's, I'm just curious how, okay, I have like 19 questions, but how did you get it? What is your fitness quote unquote journey? How has that changed over time? Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for reflecting that back to me. I think when we're doing our thing, it's always like lovely to hear somebody's perspective. So I really, really appreciate you saying that. And that's what I do try to embody, is like the self-acceptance and such. So my fitness journey, obviously growing up with RA, as like you're constantly navigating, you're constantly troubleshooting and learning how, even if you're not conscious of it, you're learning how moving your body makes you feel. Going outside to play as a kid, not going outside to play, like that sucks. That's never fun. And throughout like my late teens, early 20s, a lot of people, and I didn't know anybody except for one family member who actually isn't blood related. He has RA, and so he was a bit of a role model, but nobody my age and that I could truly like see eye to eye on had RA. And people would be like, how do you move so much? Like, I don't understand. Like, how are you so active? I'm like, I don't know. I've been just keep moving as a kid. And little did I know that would be my mantra. So, and then late 20s, as your body starts to change, as your hormones start to reset again, like I was working a full-time job and I was a manager at a small business, and it was such a big caretaking role, and it was a nonstop role. And being a manager sounds great because you get paid a lot, but you're also like the messenger and the middleman for a lot of things, and you take on a lot of people's energy. And I just started being run into the ground. I was like, wow, I actually can't move like I used to anymore. Like, this is insane. And but I was still like backpacking, rock climbing. I'd go to the gym. I'd, try to go for a run here and there. That didn't pan out until now in my 30s. So I noticed like a big decline. I was also doing aerial fitness, which like, for anyone who is unfamiliar with like aerial silks, it's, you basically like learn how to fly up on this apparatus, and it really forces you to connect to your body. So while my energy was decreasing, I was connecting more with my body, and I was like, whoa, this is insane. Like one day my boss walks in. I love him. He's still family. Like I see them all the time. He comes in, he's like, Liv, how are you doing? I'm busy at the front desk. And I'm like, I'm not fucking okay. Like I yell, I'm like, I'm not fucking okay. And he was like, cool, we'll set up a meeting. Great. Just keep doing your thing. I was very grateful for his reaction or lack thereof. So we have this meeting and I'm like in tears and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And they're like, why don't you take like a sabbatical? Why don't you take some time off, go on disability? And I was like, no, because that's not going to help. That's a Band-Aid. So I realized, and I'm crying, I'm eating pancakes. We're out for breakfast. I'm like eating pancakes, crying. And I'm like, I just want to help people like me. Like, I just want to help them get out of this place right here. I've always had people ask me, how do I keep moving? How do I do this? And at this job, I don't have time to move on my own. And that's the problem. And so I basically stepped down from manager, demoted myself, which was great. Demotions are a good thing, people.
Yeah. You're like, as manager, I am taking the action of demoting myself from manager. Yeah. I love it. No, that's so important. Yeah. You're listening to your body.
And it was probably the first time I had ever advocated for my body in my whole life, right? I was like, wow, I think I'm growing up finally. So, and then from there, I actually reached out to my aerial fitness instructor and I was like, hey, I just want to let you know that these classes really help me connect to my body. And I'm so passionate about helping people do the same. And I just want to let you know that you inspired me. And she emails back and says, actually, I'm really happy you said this. I've been looking for a trainer to come in and take over some of my classes. How would you like to come on board? So very serendipitous, very like, wow, okay, thanks universe, so cute. That happened, and then I realized like I don't want to work for anybody but myself. Thank you. That was a beautiful stepping stone. It was fabulous, taught me so much of what to do and what not to do. And then I founded MovetoLiv in 2018, and
yeah. So MovetoLiv is your business where you do personal training, right? Or is it personal fitness? Yeah. And did you start with everything in person? Or is it?
I did.
Yeah. Of course, it's 2018. Yeah.
Yeah, 2018. It was such a different time.
It was a different time. Yeah. Sorry. I'm like, duh. But
I mean, a lot of people were doing virtual. I even had people reach out and ask me if I was like Lori Gray. She was like, hey, do you do virtual? And I was like, I really thrive on the interpersonal connection. I thrive being in person, yada, yada. That whole obviously changed. And the truth of the matter was I was afraid to go online. I didn't know how to connect with people online yet. And that also changed. And like, what a beautiful shift COVID brought, looking at the positive, the silver linings of COVID.
Yeah.
So it went completely online, not completely online. I mean, temporarily, yes, but that's when I started doing the flare friendlies 6 days a week. And I just jumped in.
Oh my gosh. So can you tell, because some people might not have, ever been to a fitness class or work with a personal trainer. Can you explain a little bit more, like, what is it like? And what are the different things that you offer, just like as an example for people to understand? Because it's so great to learn fitness from somebody who really gets it, right? Somebody who actually lives it.
For sure. So I'll start off by telling you why I even wanted to become a trainer is because I've gone to classes, I've gone to like boot camp style, I've done boxing, climbing, and in all of those, I felt like I lacked this connection to the class because there wasn't much space created for modifications, but not just modifications, but actually forming, like encouraging the people to form this workout to meet their bodies. It was like, here it is, you do your best to make it here, versus here you are, do your best to make the movements cater to you.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. And working with a personal trainer is all about, yes, accountability. That's probably the first thing people think of, like, oh man, I need a trainer, I need accountability. And the reason they don't is because, oh, I already pay for a membership. But it's also for someone to guide you and actually tell you why you're doing certain movements and how this benefits your body. It's a learning experience. It's a place to take knowledge and walk away and to be able to apply it to the rest of your life. So my thing is, I'm like, if you're not learning from your trainer, perhaps start asking questions or find a trainer that you truly feel connected with and where you can learn, because we don't want to be reliant on the trainer, and that you don't want a trainer that wants you reliant on them. It's all about the takeaway.
Yeah, I love that. And so have you always done like one-on-one plus groups, or is it all groups, or how does that work?
So I started with just one-on-one.
Okay.
Right now, most of my clients are just private one-on-one, which is great. And we get to take
That's
so much
awesome.
time and explore their bodies and movement. And I also do semi-privates, which are super fun because they're still really intimate. It's three, or like it's between 2 and 3 people, and no more than 3, because that becomes a group class at that point.
Right.
It's really hard to pinpoint each individual's needs. And they're full hour sessions, so I can actually, you know, address people individually, even though they are in a group. But it's super fun because everyone gets each other pumped up. They root each other on. They get inspired when one person pushes. I encourage people to take it at their own speed. However, their friend encourages them to push maybe a little bit harder out of their comfort zone, which is also necessary.
Yeah.
So,
well,
and then I do.
Sorry. Keep going. Keep going. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I do actually one group class a week. Besides my flow-friendlies. Yeah, and that's a flexibility class.
Oh, oh my gosh. Flexibility is like flexibility and sleep are like the unsung heroes, I think, of self-management. Yeah. Like,
yeah.
Because like on the first, like, I feel like this is my little soapbox. I feel like everyone wants to, their first 2 questions for lifestyle for rheumatoid arthritis are nutrition and exercise, which is both important, obviously really important. But when they think exercise, they usually think cardio or strengthening and kind of forget about flexibility. And I know you just posted something about flexibility, but yeah, like it's really like, the research is pretty strong for, you have to really combine cardio and strengthening and flexibility to support the joints. So anyway, not to be boring, but I just was like
100%.
Yeah.
I'm up on that box with you. I'm like,
yes. When I think one of the things I like that you do is you make movement fun, because I think a lot of people, again, it can be so deeply, people have such a deeply emotional relationship to their bodies and to sports, quote unquote, and exercise. And from your childhood, it sounds like you always like loved moving and loved being active. I was that way too. I know other people, it can be hard if you grew up, you didn't really like movement. Maybe you felt ostracized in gym class or something, or, and then you get this diagnosis and you hear from your doctors and your medical team that you're supposed to exercise, but then you're just already starting from this kind of like, blah place about it, like, oh, it's like one more thing I have to do. So, like making it fun by, I guess I'm so social that for me, it's just inherently like a semi-private or a group is like, or a one-on-one, they're all social, right? They're all a chance to kind of hang out with other people and not feel like you're just on your own.
Totally.
Yeah, but sorry, that was a little side note, but I was going to say,
all good.
Yeah, one of the biggest questions people ask me, and I'm honestly 19 years into my diagnosis, I'm still figuring this out for myself because the conditions are changing and your body changes, but when to push and when to rest. Isn't that like the $10,000 question? Like,
yes, it is.
Like, do you have any tips for disentangling that, or just empathy for people who struggle with understanding when to push your body and when to rest?
Thoughts just went through my brain at one time. It was like, phew.
I know. We could do a whole episode just on that, to be honest. Yeah.
Good. So, okay. The thing is, the reason why it's a $1,000 question or $10 million question, and why it's so difficult, is because it's so different for every single person. Is it it depends on what joints are most sensitive for you. It depends on how consistent you're being. The more consistent you are, the more of opportunity you have to push. But my mantra is, and I'll tell you what, is movement is like salt. You can always add more, but you can never take away. Once it's too salted, it's done. So it's really important that it's kind of like when you eat, you go 80% full because everything expands. So
I love that.
Like keeping that intensity level at a very manageable place, and always remembering to like leave on a really positive note with yourself, because later on, you can always add more the next day. Just because you're not sore the next day, or you didn't you didn't go 10 out of 10 in that workout does not mean you didn't benefit from that workout. And I think that's like the ableism that we put on ourselves is like, no, I should be able to do this. I should be able to lift heavier. And you know what? You don't shit on your own couch. Don't shit on your carpet.
Yes.
You can go harder. Just perhaps today is a place to honor exactly where you're at. So, and what something they actually teach us in like NASM curriculum is like a 4 to 6 week progression. So if you're being consistent, after about even like honestly like 3 weeks, like after a few weeks, you can start increasing weight. But even just the fact that NASM is teaching us that the progressions happen over such an extended period of time, it's not a week, it's not even 2 weeks, it's about 3 to 4. And if you're going really heavy, maybe 4 to 6. And we have joint problems and chronic pain and all this stuff coming up for us with so many more variables. Take your time. It is so much sweeter when you take your time. And you're going to feel 100%. It. You are going to feel that moment where, oh my God, I think I want to like push just a tiny bit harder today. That's also like trusting our gut. Is like, I think when people are like, well, should I push harder? Like when you ask that question, if you have to ask, the answer is usually like, this is a really good spot. Let's stop here.
Well, and I think what becomes, first of all, I agree with what you're saying. I love the analogy of like 80% full, like stopping before you're completely exhausted, because for me, something that happens for cardio in particular is I'll get those endorphins going and it will interfere with my ability to accurately assess whether I've pushed too far. So I've learned that because when I get those endorphins, I'm like, I'm feeling good. But then later I'll be like, nope, pushed too far, so learning but there's other times when it's like, okay, I can push it a little further with like strengthening. So yeah, it's really, like you said, knowing your body is like half the battle. And it takes time. It's like a relationship,
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to connect so deeply with your body. Understand, and the biggest part of knowing when to progress too is how do I say it? Knowing how to translate your pain. Pain is your body's language. It's not just a warning signal, it is a language. So if you're like, well, I'm running, I'm, maybe on the treadmill or outside or biking, you're doing some cardio, you're like, well, I feel like I can keep pushing, but your knees are kind of starting to go off. Maybe it doesn't mean you have to stop, but maybe your muscles are getting so tight that they're pulling at your joint and you need to stretch. So do some troubleshooting, understanding that the knee pain isn't necessarily, oh, you're getting a flare up. It's, oh my God, my muscles are sore. So getting off, stretching, and then getting back on that bike or that treadmill. And then if it still hurts, then that's when you stop. Like be a student of your experience. I actually just, I recorded something for Smart Sharp Spin where I'm like, be a student of your own experience. Constantly learn, like ask yourself out loud, why is my knee hurting? What did I just do? I was doing lunges. Oh, well, my quads are really working hard. My quads are pretty tight. My tendons are probably like firing right now. Let me stretch it out and see if my knees actually feel better. Because I think oftentimes what happens is we freak out when those pain receptors go off. It's really easy to freak out and be like, oh my God, I have to stop. Where really it's important to start asking questions and getting to know your body on a biological level and on an energetic level.
I love that. I can be very self-critical at times, or be like, why did you like push it too far? Or one of the things I've noticed, and I have tried to research how common this is with rheumatoid. I know it's very common with lupus, but I am extremely heat and light sensitive. And so my capacity to do any sort of exertion is so far down when it's hot and or sunny. So I'll do things like, okay, I'm exert, like just the other day, you make choices, right? I went to the pool with my son and I was like, I know I'm probably going to pay for this a little bit later, but I'm having fun and I want, and then later on, I'm like, why did I do that? And so one of my mantras in those moments is like, I am a work in progress. I'm a work in progress, and that just goes along with what you're saying about curiosity. And, this is, one of the kind of recurring things of this podcast, I didn't really plan in the beginning, but is that, it is, as many times as people can say it, you don't really get it till you've experienced it. But having a chronic condition like rheumatoid arthritis, it's not something that has like a beginning point and an end point, right? It's not like just you get diagnosed and then you just do this, 6-month plan and then you'll have it all figured out. And then the rest of your life, it's figured out. That's what that's what I was hoping in the beginning,
wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. And some people do. I mean, like if your medication puts you in a long-term remission, like the first 6 years for me, it kind of was like that, to be honest, actually, because I was just, my medicine worked and I was in remission. And I was like, cool, this is great.
Yeah.
But most people who aren't in that position of, remission it's up and down. And, what sometimes it can drive you batty that like what worked yesterday doesn't always work today, but just having that mindset that I'm not trying to achieve a fixed endpoint where I've 100% figured my body out, It's not, it's more like an evolution. Like it's like a clay that you're molding, but that for me, sorry, not tying into mental health, as someone with anxiety, something that my therapist pointed out to me is that like anxiety makes you want to always have like black or whites, like have the answer. And so having to learn to cope with those gray areas has been really, I feel like it was so hard to get to this point, but I am doing a lot better at it. So yay me.
Yeah, absolutely. That just made me, not to like go on a tangent, too much of a tangent, but that just like triggered my thought about like how I got a happiness coach. A good friend of mine is a Reiki master and a happiness coach. And it kind of, people are like, happiness coach. And she taught me intrinsic happiness. And what happens a lot with depression, anxiety, or even like dealing with chronic pain in general, maybe you don't identify with mental health conditions, but it's hard. And when you are in a lot of pain, you don't want to be present in this moment. You start to time travel. You go back to yesterday or the before, and you're like, oh, I used to be able to move like this, and you get depressed, or anxiety of like, oh my God, I have so much coming up, and like you're looking towards the future. And like part of like my happiness coaching, it taught me like the practice of present moment awareness and being able to come here. And some of my hardest times, like it's really hard. It's not easy. Nobody's saying this is easy, but and my partner Carrie, he made a good point, because I said, I'm so sorry lately. I've just been really off. I'm having a hard time being present, but I'm working really hard on it. Because I always check in with him and tell him where I'm at, and he's like, well, why would you want to be present? The present is really painful. I was like, I love you, first of all.
Oh,
like, thank you for understanding.
100%.
And so we try to get on this like hedonic treadmill of like hedonic happiness, which for anyone unfamiliar is like kind of like, our comfort eating, like getting what we love, those favorite things, or spending money, or like going on a trip, or like this, which is all great. It's all great, like no shade at all. But it's so important to come back to ourselves first, and it can just be really hard.
Oh my gosh, 100%. If that was the biggest stumbling block or the biggest challenge for me with therapy, was I kept being like, it almost feels at first like abusive. I'm not saying that my therapists were ever abusive, but it can feel almost abusive for someone to be like, if you're in pain, it's like they're asking you to feel more pain. At first I was like, why are you asking me to connect to my pain? That feels like you're trying to hurt me,
Yeah.
And then, but what I realized is that their philosophy, is that the suffering comes from, part of suffering comes from not being able to connect to the present and be able to fully open yourself to the present moment and it's kind of, they said it really well in one of the books I read. Of course, I can't remember the wording now, but it was something like, you can't actually give, you can't give support to yourself or compassion to yourself if you haven't first acknowledged what it is that yourself is experiencing. You can't actually say, I am in pain.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to actually feel this pain and give myself some self-compassion in this moment. I might also then in the future, I'm not giving up on any sort of resolution to this pain or relief. But yeah, I realized my entire life had been focused solely on the future. And if all that ends up doing is basically you're never actually here, you're always trying to optimize for a future that when it comes, you're not actually in that moment, you're in the future of that future. It's very meta. So yeah, I can
it really is.
I empathize though with how hard that can be to be present. That was also just if for anyone who is experiencing, maybe they're experiencing not like a physical pain necessarily, but I also struggle with panic attacks in claustrophobic situations, or technically claustrophobia, which is like fear of being trapped. So that was the same thing I had to go through with that. And I was like, again, why are you having me connect to my anxiety? Like, you want me to feel like go into a small space and literally connect to what I'm feeling rather than running it away. But it's like, the more you run away from your feelings, the stronger that they get in a weird way. So when I finally allowed myself to feel the anxiety, it made me learn, my brain like connected like in this weird like classical conditioning way that like I survived, the thing that I'm most afraid of is losing control of my mind and feeling this intense anxiety. But when I allowed myself to feel it, I was like, okay, nothing happened. You know what I mean? It just felt really
absolutely.
shitty.
That's
so
beautiful.
Anyway,
it's great. And it connects back to the previous question of like, when do we know when to progress? Well, don't look to the future. Look at right now. Look at right now. If you're trying to lift heavy in the future and that's all you're focused on, then you won't lift what's appropriate for the present moment. Everything comes full circle. It all connects.
It's all, I know, it's like I have such a hard time thinking of like titles for these episodes because it's like they're all about everything. I like that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Did you see that movie?
I haven't yet. I know I need to. Everyone's like, I can't believe you haven't. Like,
it's an experience. It's not it is a one of a kind movie. I really enjoyed it. But okay, I also wanted to ask you one of these, again, getting back to kind of the common questions people have. What are some of the biggest like myths people have about arthritis-friendly or flare-friendly workouts? Oh, my cat's making noise. I'm going to mute myself because the cat's making more noise.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I mean, so I've had a lot of people reach out, and this is why like I brought it up as like a topic. Is I've had people reach out in regards to like my YouTube channel and my flare families that I've posted, and they're like, thank you so much, because every time I go to look up for an arthritis friendly workout, I get senior workouts. And senior workouts, first of all, let me make it clear, you guys, senior workouts are badass. They are badass. And you also need to be taking, like, when you look at a video or a class, it is really important that you are represented in that movement. And the biggest myth, I think, with like arthritis-friendly workouts is that they're really easy, and they're only for people with like injury or pain. And really what they like, at least my flare-friendly workouts, they are to connect deeply to the body, whether you have chronic pain or you're on an active rest day and you have no chronic conditions at all. I've always said that in my videos. I'm like, this is perfect for anyone going through a flare-up, dealing with chronic pain, wanting to connect to their body, or you're doing an active rest day and you just want some movement. It is truly for everybody. And it's also, I've found a lot of arthritis workouts that are only in a chair. And like, to be real, we're sitting a lot already. Chair workouts are amazing. And there has to be some variety where it's laying down only. I've done doing like flat on your back. I've done standing only. Standing only is actually really important. I got actually the most requests for standing only Because I think people really just need to come out of the fetal position or the sitting position, or, you know, a lot of times we're on Zoom and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think the biggest myth is that it's easy and it's not going to get you it's not going to make you, it's not going to progress you. And actually, the flare-friendly workouts are amazing for progressing. And that's the whole point, is to progress you out of a flare-up. And not just that, but to progress you out of the mental state and the anxiety and the stress of a flare-up. So it's full body, mind, and soul.
Well, as you're talking, it made me think about how often our body becomes like the enemy when we're having a flare up. And I think that, you know, movement, exercise, whatever you want to call it, you know, for me, a lot of it has been dancing or just, you know, I've done lots of different kinds of movement over the years, but it's a way to say, like, this is not out, like, this flare up is not something necessarily that I'm fighting from the outside in. Like, it's part of me, and it can feel very empowering to be like, reconnect to your body and be like, look what my body can do today. Like, maybe I can't, you know, I was just thinking, anyway, I had a car accident in 2016 that resulted in like a concussion and some whiplash injury to my neck. And it was frustrating because I really wanted to get back into running. But for the longest time, every time I would try to jog just a tiny bit, that up and down would destabilize, make my neck pain worse again. But, you know, I was like, you know what? I used to love stair workouts, like when in track and field, when we would do stair days where we would go, you know, up and down the stadium stairs. And so I was like, the way the story should ideally end would be like, and then I realized I should do stair workouts, and I started doing them more often. I didn't do them very often, but I was like, you know, we can get so locked in. I used to just love like the simplicity of running. Like, you just put your shorts on, put your shoes on, just run. You don't have to think about, you know, oh, where are the stairs, blah, 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 you know, or putting your swimsuit on to go to the pool workout or whatever. But anyway, point being is, like, we can be so tied to what we used to be able to do that we forget what we can do, you know. Like, I can, you know, it's like, if you can't run, walk, you know. I can't necessarily go on like a long extended jog, but I can like go up and down the stairs, and that gives like the most satisfying like muscle burn on the quads. And I know stairs can be hard for some people with knee pain, but for my knees are not usually an issue. So anyway, side note, but we were talking about, you know, just, it makes me feel proud of my body instead of being like, oh, this is like I'm broken. You know what I mean? I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
100%. No, and it's that, like, when you say like, I can do it and you can't, and a lot of people I say, hey, join my flare friendly. I know that you're in a lot of pain and like, you're going to get through it. Jump in my flare friendly. And they're like, I can't do a workout. And that's the whole point of flare friendly, is that this is an opportunity to focus on what you can do. And the other thing about sort of modified workouts is, like, there's a lot of assuming, like, even I do Peloton workouts. Like, when I don't want to think about my own workout, I turn on my Peloton app and I just go, and they will modify moves that I'm like, oh my gosh, if I was modified, and no shade on Peloton, I love them, but it's just a different world. And they go to modify and they go on their knees. And I'm like, you can't modify on your knees, you guys. Like, it hurts so bad. Like, a lot of people can't go on their knees, or, you know, can't even bend their joints in that direction. So like, flare friendlies are an opportunity. And like I was explaining before, what I didn't find in those group classes that I attended, it was like, your body needs to match what the curriculum is. But no, the flare friendlies provide so many modifications and so much deep connection to the body that you're going to start to modify the movements to meet your body. And that is the golden ticket. And I want people to really take these flare friendlies and start feeling inspired to modify whatever workouts they go and do. If you go to a class, if you go to Orange Theory, Peloton, Berries, whatever you do, or you do home workouts, I want you to learn how to take movements and get creative and adapt them to meet your body's needs. And that's what flare friendlies are all about. I
love that. Yeah. Adaptation is such a huge theme for me too. And like, I mean, in occupational therapy, like we have all these like official words for different kinds of like adaptations. And, it's really all about just saying, okay, can I take this activity that I want to do? Can I either change what we call it? So we have like this literal, like crazy dictionary of, I don't want to say crazy, but this intensely detailed dictionary of like, this framework for like breaking down all these activities of daily living, like, and doing an activity analysis on them. And really, I think people who live with pain and chronic illness become their own de facto experts on this, because you experientially learn how hard certain things are and you modify them. But point being, yeah, it can be hard for the untrained eye to understand like a truly customized adaptation for somebody with, they might think, oh yeah, you just, okay, if your elbows or if your wrists hurt for downward dog, then you just quote unquote do this one modification when there's actually like 19 different modifications, so anyway, so no, I love it. And you know what, I was thinking about a way to tie in the topic of like fitness to the topic of like intimacy, because that's the other thing we're going to talk about today. I realized, the thread is like knowing your body and then connecting to your body and loving your body, right? It's part of it. But yeah, I wanted to definitely give a chance to talk to you a little bit about like how, intimacy, what intimacy what does intimacy mean to you? That sounds so and like, yeah. And I know we've had an episode on, just previously had an episode on a little panel discussion with like Allie. Actually, I wish you were there now that I think about it, but I don't think I knew you back then, but and a few others talking about, relationships and sex and intimacy with chronic pain, with rheumatoid arthritis. So yeah, feel free. This is your time to share your journeys. Yeah.
Woo-hoo. So I think what you asked, like, what does intimacy mean to you, is such an important question, because you can't assume that it's the same for everyone. But I think the umbrella feeling is like trust. And even when it's intimacy with yourself, it's like, I trust that this is what I want. I trust that this feels good. I trust that I feel safe. I feel good. I feel like this is what I need right now. And this is what I want. And intimacy with a partner is so important. And I hear so often that like people's partners, and it breaks my heart. And I want to like jump in and be like, and talk to the partner and be like, hey, look, because I'm a fixer. I'm a total Aries fixer. And but it's so important to have that intimacy with our partners, because like having that interpersonal connection is so deeply connected with pain management. And even as simple as like, I'm having a shit day, I'm in so much pain, and they go and make the day fun. And they're like, let's go. Okay, this is my own life. Let's go to Costco. Like, let's go on a beach walk. Like, let's, because you don't always have to do everything alone. And I think that intimacy also allows us to start being able to ask for help, being able to communicate, being able to be intimate with somebody, communicate your needs, understand and learn understand and learn what you want in that moment, allows you to take that into the world and say, like, maybe you're in the workplace and be like, actually, this is uncomfortable for me. Do you mind if we change and shift? And like, that's where like the kink and like BDSM and like stuff like that, and like exploring together is so beneficial. And I think that sex, intimacy, especially when you start to play with like, kink and stuff like that, it's so intertwined. Is that my word?
Yes,
intertwined.
I think
with pain management.
Yeah, no, this is really, really fascinating to me. And so just, I'm going to have a little, content warning on this, just for people who might be listening, with younger kids or whatnot, that this is going to be like an adult conversation. And I mean, I never thought to connect like the self-advocacy when you explain to your partner, like what you want or what feels good. I never actually thought about connecting that before you said it to like advocacy or, communication about your wants and needs in other contexts, but it makes so much sense, and I think you have to believe that you deserve pleasure and and that's something that I struggle with at times, being like, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but just being like, I deserve like, I mean, just a really like frank example would be like when I was younger, in my sex life, it'd be like, okay, no, sometimes I'd be like, oh, you finish, like, I don't need to have an orgasm, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
no big deal. Like, I'm like, oh, and then I'm like, no, I deserve to have one too,
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting. But it wasn't like I had poor self-esteem. It's hard to explain a little bit, but yeah, I would love to hear more from your journey. I don't personally like know too much about kink and BDSM. So how can you explain a little bit like what that is and how it's helped you in your relationship, in your life?
I'm so excited for this. And honestly, like this is the first time I've actually talked very openly, like on this platform I've talked about it with friends, like intimate spaces, but never on here. So I'm very excited for the opportunity. I think it's so important. It has a lot to do with being, again, a student of your experience. And I'll tell you, I am very new to kink. I'm very new to the world. I'm not like some veteran who's been doing this for years. And that's why I feel so passionately about sharing it, is because I've had RA since I was 4, and I'm 32 now. And this is the first time I'm experiencing like this sense of like release almost. And so let me say, I honestly, like, I'm trying to figure out where to start. Yeah. So in my life, kink is different for everybody, but in my world, like, Carrie and I play with, shibari, which is like rope tying. We play with like collars and restraints, and like we do a lot of spanking. Like I am a total, like especially because I'm a business owner, I'm a go-getter, I'm outgoing, I'm extroverted. In my entire life, I love being submissive in the bedroom. I don't have to make decisions. I don't have to I get to sit back, and we also get to explore this experience. And Carrie loves being dominant. So we are very compatible. And that's the other thing, like you really have to be compatible with your partner and like explore that. And if you're not compatible, like that's totally fine. So he has been the first partner I've actually really explored kink with. And I realized that going into it, I would use a language like, no, this hurts, like I can't. Even at like general penetration, like, because, you get sensitive, and people with chronic pain, on a science, like a biological level, because we have chronic pain, our pain receptors go off like that. They fire immediately. Our nervous system is very much higher than like the normal person, or the everyday person. So, and he actually asked me, he was like, hey, like when you say no, or like, and that's the end, I have a hard time understanding like where to go next. And so if we could maybe work on saying, hey, this is uncomfortable, can we do this instead? Like we literally played with even language, learning how to talk to one another in the bedroom, like that, so where am I going with this? This is where my brain fog is falling in, because this is it's such a broad topic.
No, but I think there's a huge difference between saying, oh, I don't like this, to this doesn't feel good, but I think this would feel better. Like then you do become, I mean, even if you're like used to being the leader or used to being the dominant person in all of your other areas of your life, and maybe you want to be a little bit more submissive, but in the bedroom, but it can still be very empowering, because to say that, and because it's predicated on you knowing your body and prioritizing your own pleasure. I think again, that's what taken me. And I think some of that for me was the sex ed that I got in high school, which was very much like boys want sex. it's up for girls have to like run away from them because it's like Pepe Le Pew. It was essentially what like sex is for boys that feels good for them. We have the power to give it to them if we want to. But it's scary because you might get pregnant and get STD. Like nothing at all was about pleasure or about, it was like, it feels good to men.
Fear.
Yeah. It was just so fear-based. I was so scared of sex. Like it took me so long. And I had the most amazing patient, like partners in the past, like nothing bad to say about any of them, that everyone has helped, over the years, me understand that this is not just, I mean, obviously not just about, like the Pepe Le Pew thing, but about like, I get to have fun. Like I literally didn't even know that it felt good for like the longest time, like not after I started having sex, but like after, just the sex education was so not pleasure-based. It was so scary and fear-based. Anyway, sorry, that's my story, but being able to say,
100%.
this is for me too. Like, and even like I remember the first time a partner said to me, like, they're like, well, when I did that whole thing of like that, I don't know what my complex is. I'm like, okay, you can fit. Like, I think for a while before I really realized how to achieve, quote unquote, achieve or get an orgasm for me, it felt like too much work. I was a little bit like, it's fine. Like, we don't have to have the orgasm every time. Like,
Good.
I remember the first time my partner said like, but I want to be able to, I want you to do it too. Like, I don't feel like it wasn't like about pleasing them, but it was almost like, oh, this person prioritizes my pleasure. And that felt more intimate to me too, instead of, again, pleasure is something that I have the power through my vagina to give to a man. Like I'm the pleasure giver, they're the receiver, period, done, So sorry. So that's, I don't really, I can't really don't that necessarily directly to like kink or anything, but it's about the communication part and the intimacies.
No, it's very true. And it's like allowing yourself to receive, like that's like the starting part of it. Like it's the learning how to receive, and like he loves understanding and learning about my body. And I've never really had a lot of partners that like wanted to learn so much and actually be like, take the time. Like it's always so quick. Like sex is always so quick. It's like you get it in, you come, you're done, float, like take a nap. Like and for us it's very, and they say like sex is adult playtime. So get into your playfulness. And so it's all about receiving, and then that communicating of like, this is what I want, this is what I need. And it totally translates to when I'm having a bad flare day where I'm like, hey, like this is how I'm feeling. I just want to let you know in case like you feel my energy being a little bit different. And this is actually what you could do for me today. If you have energy, I would love it if we could like make a meal together, or like if you could do dinner tonight. It really does come full circle. Pun intended.
I get it.
The other part of kink is also knowing how to relate your pain to something else. So when what was it? I was recently triggered into like a safety mode where I forget what happened, but I was like, babe, I feel myself really turned off. My libido's low. I'm reacting to things. I'm uncomfortable. I feel myself protecting myself. And I realized I was like, I think I actually need like a sexy time session with you so I can get a little bit of release, not just intimacy, but like I need to relearn that I'm safe. And so we had like a shibari session. It was like, we took our time. It was cute. Like, listen to music, like all this stuff. And like, it really, truly helped me. And it's because like when, like being tied up, for example, let's just focus on that. Like being tied up and restrained, like there is a bit of discomfort that you start with. You're like, oh God, my shoulder is like one way, or like, this is really tight. And then you start to kind of like breathe and relax into it. And Carrie really helped me like breathe. Like I'll say, oh my God, this is uncomfortable. And he said, he actually said, because my hands were like back here, and he's like, do you mind if we wait like just a moment and just see if you can sink into it and like breathe, because we've been here before. And you specifically you asked for the session so we can lean into feeling safe. Do you want to give it a minute? I can also untie you. And I said, no, you're right. I'm going to give it a minute. Thank you. Because I felt that come up of like, I don't want to be here. I feel unsafe. I need to feel like safer. And actually, after 1 minute, I felt fine. Everything was actually okay. And he knows me well enough to ask those questions at this point. And so you go into like once you start to sink in, you start to go into like this subspace where like you're really relaxed. It's kind of like don't know the word, but it's very just like calming. It's you're submissive and you're submitting not just to the person, but you're submitting to the experience. And for me, it's like submitting to everything that I fucking carry all day, every day. And like, I'm also with somebody that I deeply love and trust. And that's all I know is that I'm submitting, I'm releasing, I'm surrendering, and I'm with somebody that I trust. And all of a sudden I'm like floating. And if you ever study, like listen to Rachel Zoffness, and she's a pain management, she's a doctor, she works in pain management, but she explains to us how, and this is where I learned it from, how our pain receptors go off of like 3 different categories, the biopsychosocial. And so like, and she explains like why women give birth and it's so extremely painful, but they'll do it again. It's almost like they forgot how much pain it actually was, but it's because the result made you so happy that those pain receptors are no longer telling you this is something. It's not like burning yourself where it's like, ow, don't do that again. It's actually like a really happy thing. And so that's why being social is so important. It can actually decrease our pain receptor activity, is being with friends. And so when you're with a loved one and you're intimate and you feel safe, all that pain, the tightness of the rope, all of that is actually becomes pleasure. And I build, like, through that, you build a new relationship with pain. And that has been so enlightening for me. It has been such a powerful release of pain, both emotional, mental, and physical. So yeah.
I've heard that before about the intertwining of pain and pleasure. It's so fascinating. For me personally, I'm like, my mind is being blown because like being tied up is literally like claustrophobia, fear of being trapped, but like you said, it's in a safe environment where the person will untie you. So I know it's different, but I'm like that. I wrote down the word, or I typed it as you were talking, surrender, because that was something that my therapist and I did work on with my claustrophobia. It's like being like, this is the moment, like, this is the moment I'm in. Can I surrender a bit to it? And it's so not my default state. Like, I'm definitely fight, I'm a fighter. I feel like I'm like fight or flight. I want to get out, I'm get out. I guess that's flight. Sorry. I'm a flighter. I'm a flighter, not a fighter. No, I'm like, get out. Or I want to fight the feeling. I want to make the feeling go away. So, but yeah, I can just imagine how, if you're able to intertwine pain and pleasure, after thinking that pain is something you need to run away from for so long, to be able to say, this is different. This is a different experience. It's not necessarily something I need to fight against or run away from, that it can be actually part of my pleasure. That's totally, it's a paradigm shift, as they say.
It is. And I've cried a lot in those situations. And it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm crying because I don't want to be here. I'm crying because I'm like, I feel so safe.
Wow.
I feel it's like this intrinsic feeling of like, I live a life of chronic pain. I live a life where sometimes I feel trapped in my own body. And now I'm like using my body to like release all of that. And I love my body so much. And there's just like this really deep thing that happens. And sometimes it's just plain fun. Sometimes it's not all of that. Other times I'm like, holy shit. Like, I lay there afterwards and they're in like BDSM, there is like, the dominant person, like when that person is in that submissive state, that subspace, you have to nurture them afterwards. So like he'll untie me and I'll be laying there and I will sometimes like cry and release, and he'll just nurture me, make sure I'm okay, like rub my muscles and check in and see how I'm feeling. And yeah, so everything I described, it increases our intimacy everywhere, like in our entire life. So
wow.
it's really, really cool. And I think that more people are more kinky than they even realize. It's just, it can be really scary to explore it first off. And you also need to have a partner that's willing, or if you're at an open relationship or poly or anything like that, you can like go to a party, and a lot of these parties aren't necessarily for just like, oh my God, like fuck, but it's like, it's a learning experience. It's playful, it's welcoming, it's nurturing and stuff like that. So
no, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. It's definitely something that, I don't have a lot of experience with, but that I'm always basically, like you talked about earlier, about having a curious mindset, being curious about your body, curious about your pain. And I'm very, very curious how different people like achieve a good life with pain, a good life with rheumatoid arthritis. And so this is obviously, something that helps you a lot. And I know there'll be people listening who are like, oh, I've always wanted to look into that, but I'm a little scared about it or whatnot. And now hopefully you're helping it become more normalized. So thank you.
And sex is necessary. Sex is healing. Like it is our natural like urge. And it's like I've had a lot of people would just be like, oh, well, like we just don't have sex. They're like, I'm just not that kind of person. It's like, honey, yes, you are. Yes, you are.
I mean, I think there are some people who are more asexual, but and that's okay too, to know that, but it can be from a place of knowing yourself and truly feeling that versus feeling afraid of sex and being like, I'm asexual because I'm actually afraid. I'm not real, or I'm afraid to engage in it. And I think, that's something I can kind of identify with. At times I've been like, oh, it's not it. I don't know how to put my finger on it, but I think I got so ingrained. I'm such a goody two shoes. It was like, sex is bad. It's what bad girls do. If you do have sex, you're going to get pregnant and get an STD. And like, it took me a long time to kind of unlearn that. So I was kind of like, not for me, like not going to worry about this for a long time.
Hard. Yeah. I mean, society places so much stigma and pressure on women. And on top of that, that's why like, I think sex is such an important subject for us to talk about openly, is because a lot of autoimmune and chronic conditions affect mainly women. So there is a connection there. And it's really easy to feel unsafe. And I think that's really normal for all of us. And I want anybody listening to know that, like, if you felt unsafe, it's not you. It is like, your feelings are valid. It's a really tough thing to navigate, and it's really possible to navigate.
It sounds like you have such a great partner too, that has, just helped so much. And that's so, so important. So I'm glad that you found that.
I'm very lucky.
Yes. Unfortunately, I have to start wrapping it up just time-wise, I know for both of us. But I always like to ask at the end, like, what are some of your words of wisdom or advice for the newly diagnosed people out there with rheumatoid arthritis or juvenile idiopathic?
Yeah, newly diagnosed. Well, like, it's whether you're new or a veteran, like always be a student of your experience. So start asking questions. Find community that, whether or not, definitely find your chronic community, and also like build your general community around people who are rooting you on, lifting you up, always cheering you on. And just know that your pain is not the end of the road. It is a learning experience. It is a journey. And there are so many people who are ready to like be on that journey with you.
I love that. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I see on social media, especially on Facebook groups, people who are like, I just got diagnosed, like, is my life over? I want to validate, it can feel like your life is over. Your life, as you knew it, the things you might have expected or hoped for the future are probably going to have to change a bit. And that's just reality, but that does not mean it's over. It's, different. So different doesn't mean over.
For sure. It's okay to mourn your past.
Yeah.
and also drive forward to the future. Quantum emotions.
Oh, whoa,
emotions.
we just went another layer. Whoa, I just broke the space-time continuum. No. Yay, I love it. And then is there anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up that we didn't get a chance to say yet?
Oh my goodness. Not that I can think of, but
Okay.
I do welcome people to like, I'm an open book. So if anybody wants to ever reach out and chat
Yes.
about the subjects we talked about today, from like fitness to kink and intimacy and anything in between, I am always happy to be a part of your team. So
Oh, that's awesome. Yes. And so you're on Instagram at MovetoLiv, like the word MOVETO and then LIV, right?
Yep.
And you're also on
Yep.
Facebook at that. And then you have a YouTube channel.
I
So
do have a YouTube channel. Yeah.
yeah. So I'll link to all of those, but thank you so much for your time. I know, like you said, you hadn't talked about some of these topics earlier. So I appreciate you being, open to talking about it here, because again, I think it's really, this podcast is really just about sharing people's true, authentic life stories and what is helpful for them. So, so I appreciate you. I'm so glad we finally got to talk.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you providing the space. I truly appreciate you providing the space and the platform and like spending this time with me. You're amazing.
You're amazing. And I was just thinking, I did my grad school in the Bay Area, and I've been wanting to go back and visit sometime. So I'll definitely
come on over.
Yeah, come on over. So I'm just inviting myself to come visit you.
I hope so. Yeah.
No,
our door is always open.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, well, we'll wrap up for now. Talk to you later.
All right. Thank you. Bye.